Depending on the study you read, you'll find that between 60 to 90% of young people when they graduate from high school leave the church. That is incredibly disturbing. One of the most important studies on helping children and youth stick with their faith is called Hemorrhaging Faith: Why and When Canadian Young Adults Are Leaving, Staying, and Returning to the Church. This pivotal study surveyed over 2,000 Canadian young adults, and information gleaned as well from personal interviews of some of those respondents. It suggests several ways that parents, youth workers, children's ministry staff, and others in the church can help youth and children follow Jesus throughout their lifetime. I want to share 4 of them with you today. The first one is to help parents engage spiritually. One of the recurring themes that kept coming up over and over again in the study was that those who continued to be engaged in their local church often had parents who modeled an authentic faith. They saw their parents praying and reading the Bible. It wasn't just a sporadic thing, but it was something that happened regularly. But even more important than that, they saw their parents living out their faith in a way that impacted their everyday lives. They were not afraid to show their children how a Christian worldview can help them navigate through the challenges and opportunities that they face. The implication is that when we help parents to continue to grow in their faith, their children benefit in faith-sustaining ways. So we need to do all that we can in our churches to help parents engage spiritually. The second key finding, or way that we can help children and youth stick with their faith, is to facilitate God moments. What the study discovered is that one of the key differences between those who stay in the church and those who leave is the extent to which they personally experience God. Those who can recall answers to prayer, or maybe how they experience God in worship, service, community, or in some other way, are much more likely to press on with God later in life. Many of those still tracking with God experienced Him in a profound way through summer camp or a short-term missions trip. Well, when I was 12, I had a God moment at summer camp. We were doing an overnight trip to an abandoned farmyard, and one of the campers got seriously injured. As they took him to the hospital, well, the rest of us, we were freaking out. And we had some pretty deep conversations around the campfire that night. God showed up in an amazing way. And I actually had the opportunity to lead one of my fellow campers to the Lord. That experience had a profound impact on my life. So how do we facilitate God moments? I believe that we need to create friendly spaces for children or youth, or encourage them to move towards already created spaces that help them experiment with their faith, to put God to the test in a good kind of way, where we're dependent on Him for Him to provide, for Him to show up, for Him to answer prayer. And we can do this at camp, short-term missions like I mentioned, but we can also have serving projects, deep worship and prayer times, meaningful Bible studies, and so on. And so that's the second strategy, to facilitate God moments for children and youth. The second, or third rather, strategy or way that we can help children and youth stick with their faith is to invite them to be vital members of the church community. You see, when students feel like they truly belong in a church community, they're much more likely to stay within the church. In this kind of community, people care about them. Some may even mentor them. Others in the church community see their gifts and encourage them to serve in meaningful ways. Imagine, the youth worship team has just, led the congregation in worship. The service is over, and and you go up to that young drummer and you say to her, wow, thank you so much for leading us in worship this morning. You did a great job of worshiping through your drumming. Can you imagine the impact that will have on that young woman who has been commended by someone older in the church? It's huge. And we can encourage people. It only takes one sentence sometimes to encourage and empower people in their service for the Lord. And what this does is it gives children and youth an opportunity to make a difference, to feel like they really are a key part of the church family. So what are the implications of this particular finding for the rest of the church? Well, obviously we need to be friendly with children and youth. Get to know their names. You talk to them when you see them. Include them in meaningful ways. Pray for them, pray with them, treat them like equal members of the body of Christ, because they are equal members of the body of Christ. Encourage them and empower them to live out God's calling on their lives. I still remember one of my youth leaders in high school who challenged this kind of rebellious 15-year-old to lead within the youth ministry. I mean, at first I thought, are you crazy? Me? But he believed in me. He saw something in me that I didn't even see at that point, and I took up the challenge. And it had a huge, huge impact on my life. The fourth way that we can help children and youth stick with their faith and continue in the church is to make Christianity relevant. Young adults who leave the church often say that Christianity is irrelevant. In their view, it does not address their deep longings and hard questions. Many of those who stay in the church share a different story. In some cases, their churches did not shy away from the difficult issues. They, as communities of faith, wrestled through issues together. Teaching times were deeply biblical, but they showed how truth intersected with real life. Well, the findings that I've shared with you challenge me as a parent of 4 kids and as a leader in the church. The Hemorrhaging Faith study has much more to say. In fact, you can get a copy of the full study on the Hemorrhaging Faith website, or you can view a number of training sessions by one of the study's authors on the Ministry Lift website. Let's make sure that we do all that we can to help children and youth follow Jesus and be vital members of a local church for their entire lifetime.